The moment Theresa Parker rode into Red Bluff, California, she knew every eye in town would be on her. And she was right. It was early June in 1878, and the dusty Main Street stretched before her like a gauntlet she had to run. The horse beneath her was stolen, though she preferred to think of it as borrowed from necessity. Her father's clothes hung loose on her frame, the fabric rough against skin that had once known silk and satin. She had cut her dark hair short with kitchen scissors 3 days ago, leaving it ragged around her ears. The wide-brimmed hat she wore cast shadows across her face, hiding the bruise that still bloomed purple along her jaw. She needed work. She needed shelter. She needed to disappear. The general store, the saloon, the post office all blurred past as she guided the mare toward the edge of town where she had heard men gathered looking for ranch hands. Her hands trembled slightly on the reins, but she forced them steady. She had practiced lowering her voice, had memorized the way men walked, talked, carried themselves. She would survive this. She had to. 3 men stood near a water trough, their conversation stopping as she approached. She dismounted, trying to mimic the careless swing she had observed in her brothers before everything fell apart. "Looking for work," she said, pitching her voice low and rough. The oldest of the 3, a man with silver streaking his beard, looked her up and down. "What kind of work?" "Ranch work, cattle, horses, whatever needs doing." "You look like a strong wind would blow you to Texas," another man said, spitting tobacco juice into the dirt. Before she could respond, a voice cut through the morning air like a blade through water. "I will take him." Theresa turned to see a man approaching on a blood-bay stallion. He sat the horse like he was born in the saddle, his frame tall and lean, his face weathered by sun and wind. His eyes were the color of creek water in winter, pale green and impossibly direct. He wore dark trousers, a simple cotton shirt, and a leather vest that had seen better days. There was something about the set of his shoulders, the quiet confidence in his bearing, that made the other men step back without being asked. "Nathaniel Noble," the silver-bearded man said. "Didn't know you were hiring." "I am now," Nathaniel said. He looked at Theresa, and for one heart-stopping moment she was certain he could see right through her disguise, but his expression remained neutral, almost kind. "You know horses?" "Yes, sir," she managed. "Cattle, I can learn." Something that might have been approval flickered in those pale eyes. "What do I call you?" She had prepared for this. Terry Parker." "Well, Terry Parker, I am offering room, board, and $30 a month. The work is hard, the days are long, and I expect honesty and effort." "You give me that and we will get along fine." $30 a month. It was more than she had hoped for. "I accept." "Good, follow me. My ranch is about an hour north." As they rode out of town, Theresa felt the weight of watching eyes fall away. The land opened up before them, rolling hills covered in golden grass that rippled like water in the breeze. Oak trees dotted the landscape, their branches spreading wide for shade. In the distance, she could see mountains rising blue and hazy against the horizon. Nathaniel rode slightly ahead, not pushing conversation, and she was grateful for the silence. It gave her time to steady her breathing, to remind herself of the story she had constructed. Terry Parker, age 19, from a small farm in Oregon, looking for a fresh start after his family died of fever. Simple. Difficult to verify. Sad enough that people would not ask too many questions. The ranch, when it came into view, was more substantial than she had expected. A 2-story house stood at the center, built from timber and stone with a wide porch that wrapped around the front. There was a large barn, several corrals, a bunkhouse, and various other outbuildings. Cattle grazed in the distance, their dark shapes moving slowly across the grassland. "I run about 500 head," Nathaniel said, noticing her gaze. Used to be more, but I have been short-handed since my foreman left last month. Got 3 other hands staying in the bunkhouse. They are good men, but we have been stretched thin." He dismounted near the barn and she followed suit. A dog came trotting over, a black and white collie with intelligent eyes. "That is Ranger," Nathaniel said. "He is friendlier than he looks." The dog sniffed at Theresa's extended hand, then allowed her to scratch behind his ears. The simple warmth of the animal's trust made something tight in her chest loosen just slightly. "Come on," Nathaniel said. "I will show you where you will sleep, then introduce you to the others." The bunkhouse was clean and simply furnished. 4 narrow beds lined the walls, each with a trunk at its foot. 2 of the beds were clearly occupied, their blankets rumpled, personal items scattered on the trunks. Nathaniel pointed to one of the empty beds. "You can take that one. There is a wash basin outside, privy behind the bunkhouse. We eat breakfast at sunrise, dinner at noon, supper at sunset. My housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, cooks for everyone. You will meet her shortly." "Thank you," Theresa said. The words felt inadequate for what this opportunity meant, but they were all she had. Nathaniel studied her for a long moment. "Those clothes look like they have been through hell. We will get you some proper work gear. Cannot have you falling apart in the middle of a cattle drive." Heat rose to her cheeks. "I can pay you back once I get my wages. We will work it out." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Terry." "Yes, sir." "Whatever you are running from, it is none of my business. But while you are on my land, working my ranch, you are under my protection. You understand?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. "Good. Get settled. I will send one of the hands to fetch you when it is time for dinner." After he left, Theresa sat on the edge of the bed and allowed herself to shake. Her hands trembled, her legs felt weak, and for the first time in days she felt the threat of tears. But she swallowed them back. Crying was a luxury she could not afford. Instead, she opened her small bundle of possessions, what little she had managed to grab when she fled. A change of clothes. A photograph of her mother dead these 5 years. A small knife. And folded at the very bottom, the letter that had started everything. She did not read it again. She had memorized every word, every threat, every promise that had driven her from her home in the dead of night. A knock on the doorframe made her jump. A young man stood there, probably close to her own age of 22, with sandy hair and an easy smile. "You must be Terry. I am Ben Richardson. Nathaniel asked me to show you around before dinner." Theresa stood, tucking the bundle back into the trunk. "Pleasure to meet you." Ben was a talker, filling the silence as he led her around the property. He showed her the barn where the horses nickered softly in their stalls. The tack room, organized with the kind of precision that spoke of Nathaniel's character. The various corrals and pens. The chicken coop where Mrs. Chen's hens scratched in the dirt. "Nathaniel is a fair boss," Ben said as they walked. "Firm but fair. He does not ask anything of us he would not do himself. Works harder than any man I have ever known. He built most of this place with his own hands over the past 8 years. He seems young to have accomplished so much," Theresa ventured. "He is 27, I think. Came out here after the war. Does not talk much about it, but I think he saw some hard things. A lot of men did." Ben glanced at her. "You ever been in a war?" "No," she said quickly. "Too young." "Lucky you. My father fought, never was quite the same after." They passed the main house, and through the window, Theresa caught a glimpse of a woman moving around inside. Mrs. Chen, she assumed. The smell of cooking food drifted out, making her stomach clench with hunger. She had not eaten properly in days. The other 2 ranch hands were introduced at dinner. Carlos Martinez, a weathered man in his 40s with kind eyes and work-roughened hands, and Samuel Foster, younger than Ben but already competent in the way of men who grew up working the land. They ate at a long table in the main house, Mrs. Chen serving platters of beef, potatoes, beans, and fresh bread. The food was simple but plentiful, and Theresa had to force herself to eat slowly, to remember she was supposed to be a young man with an appetite but also manners. Nathaniel sat at the head of the table, mostly listening as his men talked about the work that needed doing. There was fence repair in the north pasture. Several horses needed shoeing. The cattle needed to be moved to higher grazing land before the grass dried out completely. "Terry, you will work with me tomorrow," Nathaniel said. "I want to see what you can do with horses before I put you on anything else." "Yes, sir," she said. His eyes met hers across the table, and again she felt that unsettling sensation that he could see more than she wanted him to. But he simply nodded and went back to his meal. That night, lying in her narrow bed in the bunkhouse, listening to the soft breathing of the other hands, Theresa allowed herself to feel a small measure of hope. She had made it through the first day. She had work, shelter, food. It was more than she had dared to hope for when she fled her uncle's house in Sacramento. Her uncle. Just thinking of him made her stomach turn. After her father's death 6 months ago, she had been placed in his care, along with her inheritance. A substantial amount of money and land that was supposed to be hers when she turned 25. But her uncle had other plans. He wanted the money for himself, and the easiest way to ensure that was to marry her off to his business partner, a man nearly 50 years old with 2 dead wives already to his name. She had refused. Her uncle had insisted. She had refused again. And then the letter had come, delivered by her uncle's lawyer, explaining that if she did not comply, there were ways to have her declared incompetent, to have her committed to an asylum where she would conveniently stay until she either agreed or lost her mind entirely. That night, she had cut her hair, stolen her dead brother's clothes, taken a horse from the stable, and ridden away from everything she had ever known. Now she was here, in a bunkhouse in Red Bluff, pretending to be someone she was not, hoping that the distance and disguise would be enough to keep her safe. Sleep came eventually, though it was troubled by dreams of her uncle's face and the sound of locked doors. She woke before dawn to the sound of Ben stirring. The others followed quickly, everyone moving with the efficiency of routine. Theresa dressed as quickly as she could while trying to maintain some semblance of privacy, grateful for the dim light and the other men's disinterest. Breakfast was hearty, eggs and bacon and more of that good bread. Mrs. Chen, a small Chinese woman with silver threading through her black hair, smiled at Theresa kindly and piled her plate high. "You eat," she said in accented English. "Too thin, you eat." "Yes, madam," Theresa said, and was rewarded with an approving nod. After breakfast, Nathaniel led her to the barn. The morning air was cool, the sun just beginning to paint the sky with gold and pink. Ranger trotted at their heels, tail waving. "Show me how you handle a horse," Nathaniel said, gesturing to a bay mare in one of the stalls. Theresa approached slowly, speaking softly to the animal. The mare's ears flicked forward, curious but not afraid. She ran her hand along the horse's neck, feeling the warmth of muscle beneath skin, the steady thrum of life. Horses, at least, did not care about gender or propriety. They cared about how you treated them. She haltered the mare and led her out into the yard. Nathaniel watched, his expression unreadable. She checked the horse's hooves, ran her hands down each leg checking for heat or swelling, examined the mare's teeth and eyes. "She is about 6 years old," Theresa said. "Well cared for, a little tender on the right front but nothing serious." "Maybe she stepped wrong recently." Nathaniel nodded slowly. "What else? She is bred for endurance, not speed. Good temperament. Would make an excellent ranch horse or a reliable mount for long distances. Saddle her. Theresa did, grateful for the countless hours she had spent in her father's stables, the lessons he had insisted on despite her mother's protests that it was not ladylike. She saddled the mare efficiently, checked the cinch twice, adjusted the stirrups. Mount up. She swung into the saddle, settling her weight, finding her balance. The mare stood steady. Take her around the corral. Walk, trot, canter. Show me how she responds. For the next 20 minutes, Theresa put the mare through her paces. She could feel Nathaniel's eyes on her the entire time, evaluating, judging. When she finally brought the mare to a stop in front of him, he was almost smiling. "Where did you learn to ride like that?" She had anticipated this question. "My father. He loved horses. Taught all of us kids everything he knew. He taught you well." Nathaniel reached up to pat the mare's neck. "This is Daisy. She is one of my favorites. Steady, smart, good heart. I think she will be your mount while you are here." "Mine." The word came out too high and she quickly coughed to cover it. A good ranch hand needs a good horse. Daisy needs someone who will appreciate her. Seems like a fair match. Something warm unfurled in Theresa's chest. Gratitude, yes, but something else too. Something that felt dangerously like belonging. The days that followed fell into a rhythm. She rose with the sun, worked alongside the other hands until her muscles ached and her hands blistered, then calloused. She learned to rope cattle, to brand calves, to repair fences and mend tack. She learned the boundaries of the ranch, the best grazing lands, where the creek ran cold and clear even in the heat of summer. And she learned about Nathaniel Noble. He was a man of few words but much action. He worked harder than any of his hands, often the first one awake and the last to sleep. He was fair in his dealings, quick to praise good work and patient with mistakes, though he did not tolerate laziness or dishonesty. The ranch ran smoothly under his guidance, every person and animal in their proper place, every task completed with efficiency. But there were moments when Theresa caught him staring into the distance, his expression distant and troubled. Moments when she saw the weight he carried, the loneliness that seemed to emanate from him despite being surrounded by people. One evening, about 2 weeks after she arrived, she found him in the barn long after the others had turned in. He was working on a saddle, the leather dark with age and use, his hands moving with practiced precision as he replaced the stitching. "That saddle looks like it has seen better days," she said from the doorway. He glanced up, not startled. "It was my father's. He carried it through the war, then out here when he tried to start a ranch in Colorado. When he died, it came to me. I am sorry about your father. It was a long time ago." But his hands stilled on the leather and his eyes grew distant. "He was a good man. Hard the way men were in those days, but good. He taught me that the land will give you what you need if you are willing to work for it and respect it." Theresa moved closer, drawn by the rare moment of openness. "Is that why you came here, to build what he could not?" "Partly. Mostly I came because I needed somewhere that was mine. After the war, I could not go back to Virginia. Too many ghosts, too much destruction. So I headed west like everyone else looking for a fresh start." He resumed his stitching. "What about you, Terry? What ghosts are you running from?" The question caught her off guard. "What makes you think I am running from anything?" "Everyone who comes west is running from something or running toward something. Usually both." His eyes met hers, and the kindness in them made her throat tight. "You do not have to tell me, but if there is trouble following you, I would rather know about it before it shows up on my doorstep." She wanted to tell him. The urge to unburden herself was almost overwhelming, but the risk was too great. If he knew she was a woman, he would send her away, and if he knew about her uncle, he might decide she was more trouble than she was worth. "No trouble," she said finally. Just bad memories I am trying to leave behind." He studied her for a long moment, and she was certain he did not believe her. But he nodded. "Fair enough. Just know that if trouble does come, you have got people here who will stand with you. That is what a crew does." "Thank you," she whispered. He returned to his work on the saddle, and she stood watching for a moment longer, memorizing the way the lamplight played across his features, the concentration in his expression, the strength in his hands. Then she left before she did something foolish like cry or confess everything. The heat of summer settled over the land like a blanket. The work grew harder as they moved cattle to higher pastures, repaired irrigation ditches, and brought in the hay. Theresa's body adapted to the physical demands, growing stronger, leaner. Her hands were rough now, her skin tanned from constant sun exposure. The other hands accepted her as one of them. Ben treated her like a younger brother, always ready with advice or a joke. Carlos taught her how to throw a lasso properly, patiently correcting her form until she could rope a running calf. Samuel showed her the best fishing spots along the creek, and they spent a peaceful Sunday afternoon catching trout for Mrs. Chen's dinner. But it was Nathaniel who occupied her thoughts more than she wanted to admit. She found herself watching him when she thought he would not notice. The way he sat a horse, the rare smile that transformed his usually serious face, the gentleness in his hands when he worked with a skittish colt. She noticed the way he always made sure everyone else ate before he took his own portion, the way he paid Mrs. Chen more than he probably needed to, the way he never raised his voice in anger but could convey disappointment with a single look. He was a good man. A truly good man. And she was lying to him every single day. The guilt ate at her, but the alternative was worse. She had nowhere else to go, no other options. So she swallowed the guilt and focused on her work. One afternoon in late July, they were working on breaking a young stallion. The horse was beautiful, all black except for a white star on his forehead. But he was stubborn and strong and did not appreciate the idea of a saddle. Nathaniel had been working with him for weeks, slowly building trust. Theresa stood outside the corral watching as he moved around the animal, talking in that low, steady voice that seemed to calm even the most nervous creatures. "You see how he is listening?" Nathaniel called to her. "His ear is tracking my voice, even while his body is telling him to run. That is where you build the bridge, between the instinct to flee and the willingness to trust." The stallion snorted, pawing the ground, but he did not bolt. "How do you know when he is ready?" she asked. "You feel it. In the way he moves, the way he breathes." Trust is not about breaking a horse's spirit. It is about showing him that you are worth trusting. He took a step closer to the stallion, hand extended. The horse trembled but held his ground. "There you go. Good boy." Watching him work was like watching poetry in motion. Every movement deliberate, every word carefully chosen. And when the stallion finally allowed Nathaniel to touch his neck, to run his hand along the powerful shoulder, Theresa felt tears prick her eyes for reasons she could not fully name. "Terry, come in here," Nathaniel said. "What? Come on." "Slowly. I want him to get used to other people." She climbed the fence and dropped into the corral, her heart hammering. The stallion's eyes rolled white, muscles bunching. "Easy," Nathaniel said, though she was not sure if he was talking to her or the horse. "Just walk over here slowly. Keep your movements smooth." She did as instructed, hyper-aware of the powerful animal just feet away, of Nathaniel's steady presence beside her. "Put your hand here," he said, guiding her hand to the stallion's shoulder. His fingers wrapped around hers, warm and calloused, and she forgot how to breathe. The horse's coat was hot beneath her palm, the muscle twitching under her touch, but he did not pull away. "Feel that." Nathaniel's voice was close to her ear. "He is learning that we are not going to hurt him. That touch can mean safety instead of danger." She nodded, not trusting her voice. Nathaniel's hand was still covering hers, and she was acutely aware of every point of contact. His breath stirred the hair near her ear. She could smell leather and horse and something underneath that was purely him. "You have a gentle way about you," he said quietly. "Animals respond to that. So do people." She turned her head slightly and found his face inches from hers. Those pale green eyes were looking at her with an expression she could not quite read. Something shifted in the air between them, a tension that made her skin feel too tight. The stallion shifted, breaking the moment. Nathaniel stepped back, clearing his throat. "That is enough for today," he said, his voice rough. "We will try the saddle tomorrow." She nodded and made her way out of the corral on shaking legs. Whatever had just happened, it complicated everything. Because the way her heart was racing, the way her skin still tingled where his hand had touched hers, that was not something she could afford to feel. That night, she lay awake long after the other hands had fallen asleep. Through the small window, she could see the main house, a lamp still burning in what she knew was Nathaniel's room. Was he awake too? Was he thinking about that moment in the corral? She rolled over, pulling the thin blanket up to her chin. This was dangerous. She could not develop feelings for Nathaniel Noble. She was living a lie, wearing a disguise, hiding who she truly was. Even if by some miracle he felt something for her too, it was Theresa Parker he saw, not Theresa. And Theresa Parker did not exist, but her heart, it seemed, did not care about logic. The next few days were a special kind of torture. She found herself hyper-aware of Nathaniel's presence, of every word he spoke to her, every glance in her direction. She caught him watching her sometimes with that same unreadable expression, and she wondered what he was thinking. The other hands noticed nothing, wrapped up in their own concerns. Ben was courting a girl in town and spent his free time talking about her. Carlos was worried about his sister in San Francisco, who had written about some trouble with her husband. Samuel was saving money to buy his own piece of land someday. Theresa listened to their conversations, participated when expected, but felt increasingly isolated. They could talk about their pasts, their hopes, their futures. She could share nothing real, only the carefully constructed fiction of Theresa Parker's life. One Sunday, Mrs. Chen asked if anyone wanted to ride into town. Ben jumped at the chance to see his girl. Samuel and Carlos decided to go for supplies and a drink at the saloon. Theresa begged off, claiming she wanted to rest, but really she just could not face the scrutiny of the townspeople. She spent the afternoon down by the creek, hidden among the willows, finally allowing herself to just be. She took off her hat, letting what little breeze there was cool her head. She unlaced her boots and put her feet in the cold water, sighing at the relief. "Mind if I join you?" She nearly jumped out of her skin. Nathaniel stood a few feet away, hat in hand, looking tired but calm. "I thought you went to town," she said, scrambling to put her boots back on. "Was going to, but decided I would rather have some quiet." He sat down on a rock near the water, not close enough to crowd her but close enough to talk. "You do not have to hide on my account." She settled back onto the bank, boots still unlaced, feet still in the water. "I was not hiding." "No." There was amusement in his voice. "You have been jumping like a cat in a room full of rocking chairs for 3 days now, something bothering you." "Everything," she thought. "You are bothering me. These feelings are bothering me. This whole impossible situation is bothering me. Just thinking about things," she said instead. "What kind of things?" "The future, I guess. What comes next?" He was quiet for a moment, watching the water flow over the rocks. "You planning on leaving?" "No," she said quickly, too quickly. "I mean, not unless you want me to." "I do not want you to." The words were simple, direct, and they made her heart stutter. You are a good hand, Terry. More than that, you fit here, the others like you, the animals trust you, and the work gets done. I hope you will stay. I will, she promised. As long as you will have me. He looked at her then, really looked, and she felt exposed despite all her layers of disguise. There is something different about you, something I cannot quite figure out, but I trust you, whatever it is. The words should have comforted her, but instead they made the guilt worse. He trusted her, and she was lying to him every moment of every day. Nathaniel, she started, not even sure what she was going to say. You do not have to explain, he interrupted. We all have our secrets, our reasons for things. I have mine too. He looked back at the water. After the war, I did things I am not proud of. I was angry, lost, hurting. I made choices that hurt people. It took me a long time to find my way to something better, to build something good instead of destroying things. You are a good man, she said softly. I try to be. But I know what it is like to need to escape your past, to want to be someone different than who you were. So I understand, Terry. Whatever you are carrying, you do not have to carry it alone. The kindness in his words broke something open inside her. Before she could stop herself, she was crying, great gasping sobs that shook her whole body. She tried to hide it, turning away, but it was too late. Hey, Nathaniel said, moving closer. Hey, it is all right. I am sorry, she choked out. I am so sorry. He put a tentative hand on her shoulder, and when she did not pull away, he drew her into his arms. She should have resisted. This was too dangerous, too revealing. But she had not been held in months, had not felt safe or comforted, and his embrace was both. She cried into his shirt while he held her, one hand rubbing her back in slow circles, murmuring words she could not quite make out over her own sobbing. He smelled like sun-warmed cotton and horses and home. Eventually, the tears subsided. She pulled back, wiping at her face with her sleeve, unable to meet his eyes. I am sorry, she said again. That was not very manly of me. Terry, look at me. She forced herself to meet his gaze. Men cry, he said firmly. Any man who says he does not is a liar or a fool. I cried for weeks after my father died. Crying does not make you weak. It makes you human. She nodded, throat too tight to speak. He reached up and gently wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb, and the gesture was so tender that it made her want to cry all over again. His hand lingered on her face, his eyes searching hers. Whoever hurt you, he said quietly, they were wrong to do it. And if they ever come here, they will have to go through me. Thank you, she whispered. They sat there by the creek until the sun began to set, not talking much, just being together. And for the first time since she fled her uncle's house, Theresa felt something like peace. August came with scorching heat that baked the land and made the work even harder. They spent long days moving cattle to wherever there was still decent grazing, repairing the constant damage to fences from both animals and weather, and maintaining the precious irrigation systems that kept the ranch viable. Theresa fell into bed exhausted every night, too tired to dream, too tired to worry. It was almost a relief, the physical demands overriding the emotional turmoil, but she could not escape her growing feelings for Nathaniel. They had become friends after that afternoon by the creek, talking more easily, sharing small confidences. He told her about his childhood in Virginia, about his mother who died when he was young, about the horrors of the war and the difficult years after. She told him carefully edited stories about her fictional family, her imaginary brothers, her made-up life in Oregon. Every lie made her hate herself a little more. One evening, as they worked together to tend a calf that had gotten tangled in some wire, their hands brushed. It was innocent, accidental, but the jolt that went through her was anything but. She looked up to find him watching her, and the heat in his eyes had nothing to do with the temperature. Terry, he said, then stopped, shook his head. Never mind. What is it? Nothing. Just sometimes I wish things were different. Different how? But he just stood, brushing dirt off his pants. We should get this calf back to its mother. She wanted to push to ask what he meant, but she did not have the right. She was already taking too much from him with her deception. Later that week, a stranger rode into the ranch. He was well dressed, his horse expensive, his manner that of someone used to getting his way. Theresa was in the barn when he arrived and heard his voice carrying across the yard. "I am looking for Nathaniel Noble." "That would be me," Nathaniel said, his tone wary. "What can I do for you?" "My name is Frederick Patterson. I represent certain business interests in Sacramento. We have been buying up properties in this region, and we are prepared to make you a very generous offer for your ranch." Theresa's blood turned to ice. Patterson, her uncle's business partner, the man she was supposed to marry. She shrank back into the shadows of the barn, heart hammering. Had he seen her? Did he know she was here? "I am not interested in selling," Nathaniel said firmly. "Perhaps you should hear the offer before you make that decision. We are prepared to pay well over market value. You could take the money, start fresh somewhere else. A young man like you could do a lot with that kind of capital." "I said I am not interested. Everyone has a price, Mr. Noble. Mine is not for sale." There was steel in Nathaniel's voice now. "I built this ranch with my own hands and I plan to keep it. Now if you will excuse me, I have work to do." "Think about it," Patterson said. "I will be in town for a few days. You know where to find me if you change your mind." Theresa watched through a crack in the barn wall as Patterson rode away. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to clasp them together. Was he here because of the land purchases, or was he looking for her? Sacramento was not that far from Red Bluff. If her uncle had figured out where she went, if he had sent Patterson to find her. She needed to leave. It was not safe here anymore. But the thought of leaving, of never seeing Nathaniel again, made her chest ache. That night at dinner, Nathaniel was quieter than usual. After the meal, he asked all the hands to stay. "I want you all to know that a man came by today trying to buy the ranch. I turned him down and I will keep turning him down. But men like that do not usually take no for an answer. I want you all to be watchful. If you see strangers hanging around, if anything seems off, you come tell me immediately." "You think there is going to be trouble?" Ben asked. "I think it pays to be cautious." Nathaniel's eyes found Theresa's across the table. "I protect what is mine. That includes this land and the people on it." The words should have comforted her. Instead, they made her guilt multiply. She was putting him in danger just by being here. If Patterson recognized her, if her uncle came looking, Nathaniel would stand between them and her. And he might get hurt because of it. She could not let that happen. After everyone had gone to bed, she sat on the porch of the bunkhouse, trying to figure out what to do. The night was clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. Could not sleep either. She looked up to find Nathaniel approaching, Ranger at his heels. "Just thinking," she said. He sat down beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him in the cooling night air. "About Patterson, among other things. You do not need to worry about him. I meant what I said. I am not selling. What if he makes trouble? Then I will deal with it." He leaned back against the porch post, tilting his head to look at the stars. "I did not come all this way and work this hard to give up the first time someone waves money at me. It is not just about the money, though, is it? It is about what you built. What this place means. You understand," he said softly. "Most people think it is just land, just cattle, but it is more than that. It is proof that I can create something instead of destroying it. It is proof that I am more than what the war made me." She understood more than he knew. This place was her proof too. Proof that she could survive, that she was stronger than her uncle believed, that she was more than just a piece of property to be married off. "What are you thinking about?" Nathaniel asked. How strange life is. How you can be running away from something and end up finding exactly what you needed. Is that what happened to you? You found what you needed here. She looked at him, at the strong lines of his face in the starlight, at the kindness in his eyes, and knew she was already in too deep to save herself. Yes, she said simply. I did. He reached over and took her hand. It was the first time he had initiated contact since that day by the creek, and the shock of it ran through her like lightning. Terry, I need to tell you something. Her heart was beating so hard she was sure he could hear it. What? I have been trying to figure out how to say this for weeks now. Hell, I have been trying to figure out what this even is. He turned her hand over in his, studying it. You have made my life better. This ranch, it was my purpose, my focus, but it was also lonely. I had hands who worked for me, but no real friends. No one I could talk to, and then you showed up and everything changed. Nathaniel, she started, but he continued. I know this is not appropriate. You work for me, and that makes this complicated. But I have never been good at hiding how I feel, and I cannot keep pretending that you are just another hired hand. You are more than that to me. You do not know what you are saying. Her voice was barely a whisper. You do not really know me. I know enough. I know you are kind. I know you are hardworking. I know you have been hurt and you are trying to heal. I know that when I see you in the morning, my whole day feels brighter. Is that not enough? It should not be. It was all based on a lie. But looking into his eyes, feeling his hand warm around hers, she wanted it to be enough. She wanted it so badly it hurt. What do you want from me? She asked. I want you to stay. Not just as a ranch hand, but as someone who matters to me, someone I care about. He paused. Someone I could love if you would let me. The words hung in the air between them, full of promise and impossibility. She should tell him the truth. Right now, before this went any further. She should tell him she was a woman, that everything he thought he knew about Terry Parker was a lie, that being with her would only bring him trouble. But she was weak and selfish and so desperately in love with him that she could not make the words come. I care about you too, she said instead. More than I should, he smiled, and it transformed his whole face. Then that is enough for now. He stood, pulling her up with him. For a moment they stood face to face, hands still clasped. She thought he might kiss her, and panic and longing warred in her chest. How could she explain why he could not? But he just squeezed her hand and stepped back. Get some sleep, Terry. We have a long day tomorrow. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and watched him walk back to the main house. Ranger looked back at her once, tail wagging, then followed his master. Alone in the dark, Theresa pressed her hands to her face and tried not to scream. The next 2 weeks were the best and worst of her life. Nathaniel did not push for more than she could give, but the shift in their relationship was obvious. He found reasons to work alongside her. He saved a seat for her at meals. He smiled at her in a way that made her stomach flutter. The other hands noticed and teased good-naturedly. Ben clapped her on the shoulder and said, "Looks like the boss has a favorite." Carlos winked and told her she was lucky to have earned such respect. Samuel just grinned and said nothing. They all thought Nathaniel viewed her as a protege, a younger man he was mentoring. None of them saw the truth, the growing depth of feeling between them that had nowhere to go. Theresa felt like she was living in a dream that could become a nightmare at any moment. Every day without her uncle finding her was a gift. Every moment with Nathaniel was precious and painful in equal measure. She knew it could not last. Something would have to give. But she was not ready to let go, not yet. One afternoon, she and Nathaniel were working together to clear a blocked irrigation ditch. It was hot, dirty work, and they were both covered in mud by the time they finished. Nathaniel looked at her and started laughing. "What?" she asked. "You have mud literally everywhere, even in your hair, so do you. Come on. There is a good swimming hole about a mile from here. We can clean up and cool off before heading back. Warning bells went off in her head. I should probably just wait until tonight. Nonsense. You will be miserable riding back like that. Come on, it will take 20 minutes. She could not think of a good excuse, so she followed him, dread building with every step. The swimming hole was beautiful, a wide pool fed by a small waterfall surrounded by trees. The water was crystal clear and looked blissfully cool. Nathaniel immediately started pulling off his boots. Last one in has to muck out the stalls for a week. Nathaniel, wait. But he was already pulling his shirt over his head, revealing a tanned, muscular torso marked with old scars. He dove into the water with a whoop of joy. Theresa stood on the bank, frozen. She could not undress. She could not go in the water. But how could she explain without explaining everything? Nathaniel surfaced, water streaming from his hair. Come on, what are you waiting for? I cannot swim very well, she lied. The shallow end is only waist deep. Just wade in and splash off the mud. She hesitated, then made a decision. She took off her boots and her outer shirt, leaving on her undershirt and trousers, and waded into the water. It was cold enough to make her gasp, and she quickly bent to splash water on her face and arms, trying to clean off the worst of the mud while keeping her torso underwater. Nathaniel swam closer. See, not so bad. It is freezing. You get used to it. He dove under the water and came up right in front of her, close enough to touch. His hair was slicked back, water droplets clinging to his eyelashes. Thank you for today, for all of this. I did not do anything special, just cleared a ditch. It is not about the ditch. It is about doing it together. I spent so many years alone, Terry. Working, building, surviving, but always alone. Having someone to share it with, even something as mundane as clearing a ditch, it makes everything better. She could see every shade of green in his eyes, every fleck of gold. I am glad I could help. He reached up and gently wiped a smudge of mud from her cheek. His hand lingered, cupping her face, and she knew he was going to kiss her. She should stop him, but she wanted it too much. Consequences be damned. His lips met hers soft and questioning, giving her every chance to pull away. She did not. She kissed him back, pouring all her longing and fear and love into it. His arms came around her, pulling her close, and for one perfect moment, nothing else mattered. Then his hand slid down her back and brushed against the binding she wore beneath her shirt. He stiffened, pulling back. Confusion crossed his face. What is that? Nothing, she said quickly, stepping back. I hurt my ribs a while ago. I wear a wrap for support. He was looking at her differently now, studying her. Terry, I should get back. She waded toward the shore, heart hammering. I just remembered I promised to help Mrs. Chen with something. She grabbed her boots and outer shirt and started walking before he could stop her. Behind her, she heard him call her name, but she did not stop. She could not. Because if she stayed, if he asked the right questions, she would tell him everything. And she was not ready for this to end. That night, she avoided him at dinner, claiming she did not feel well. Mrs. Chen made sympathetic noises and brought her some soup in the bunkhouse. The other hands were in town, so she was alone with her thoughts and her fear. The kiss had been a mistake. A beautiful, perfect, terrible mistake. She could still feel his lips on hers, still feel the way her heart had soared. But she had also seen the confusion in his eyes when he felt the binding, the questions forming. How much longer could she keep this up? How much longer before everything fell apart? A soft knock on the door frame made her look up. Nathaniel stood there, hat in hand, looking uncertain in a way she had never seen. Can I come in? She wanted to say no. Yes. He entered and sat on the bed across from hers, maintaining a respectful distance. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. I am sorry if I overstepped today, he said finally. If the kiss was unwelcome. It was not unwelcome. But something is wrong, I can see it. Terry, please. Whatever it is, you can tell me. This was it. The moment of truth. She could keep lying, keep pretending, keep hiding. Or she could trust him with the truth and hope he would understand. She took a deep breath. My name is not Terry Parker. He went very still. What? My real name is Theresa Parker, and I am not a man. The silence that followed was deafening. She watched his face, saw the shock register, saw him processing the information. She reached up and pulled off her hat, running her fingers through her short hair. I am sorry I lied to you. I am sorry for all of it, but I did not have a choice. You are a woman. His voice was flat, stunned. Yes. This whole time you have been a woman. Yes. He stood abruptly, pacing the small space. Why would you lie about something like this? And so she told him. All of it. Her father's death, her uncle's guardianship, the arranged marriage to Patterson, the threat of the asylum. The desperate flight in the middle of the night, the disguise, the fear that had driven every decision. I needed to survive, she finished. And the only way I could do that was to disappear, to become someone no one would look for. I never meant to care about you. I never meant for any of this to happen, but it did, and I am so sorry. He had stopped pacing and was staring at her like she was a stranger. You have been lying to me for months. Yes. Every day, every conversation, all of it was a lie. Not all of it, she said desperately. My feelings for you, those were real. Everything I told you about who I am as a person, what I value, what I care about, that was real. The only lies were my name and my gender. The only lies. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Do you understand what this means? I have been falling in love with someone who does not even exist. Terry does not exist, she agreed, tears streaming down her face now. But Theresa does. I am real, Nathaniel. My feelings are real. What I feel for you is real. He shook his head. I need to think. I cannot do this right now. Please do not send me away, she begged. I know I do not deserve your forgiveness, but please, I have nowhere else to go. If my uncle finds me, he will lock me up and I will never get out. He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw the war playing out on his face. Anger, hurt, confusion, and underneath it all, the feelings he had admitted to. You can stay, he said finally, until we figure this out, but I need space, Theresa. I need time to process this. I understand. He left without another word, and she collapsed onto the bed, sobbing into her pillow. She had known this would happen eventually, had known that the truth would destroy whatever was growing between them. But knowing and experiencing were two very different things. The next few days were agony. Nathaniel avoided her as much as possible, assigning her to work with the other hands or to tasks that kept her far from wherever he was. When they did cross paths, he was polite but distant, treating her like a stranger. The other hands noticed something was wrong but did not know what. Ben asked if she and Nathaniel had argued. She said something vague about a misunderstanding and changed the subject. Mrs. Chen, however, took one look at her and saw the truth. The older woman cornered her in the barn one afternoon. He knows, she said simply. Theresa started to deny it, then deflated. How did you know? I know many things. I know you are a woman from the start. I know you are hiding. I know you are afraid. Mrs. Chen's expression was kind. I know what it is to run, to hide, to pretend to be something you are not, to survive. You knew the whole time. I come to this country many years ago with my husband. We face much hate, much danger. When my husband die, I have nothing. Mr. Noble, he give me job, give me safety. He is good man. He will understand when he is ready. I do not think he will. I lied to him, Mrs. Chen, about something fundamental. You lie to survive. That is different than lying to hurt. He will see this. She patted Theresa's arm. Give him time. His heart is good, but it is careful. War hurt him. Losing people hurt him. He needs time to trust again. What if time is not enough? Then at least you tell truth. That is worth something. That conversation gave Theresa a small measure of hope, but the days continued to be difficult. She threw herself into work, trying to prove her worth in the only way she could. She mended fences until her hands bled. She worked with the difficult horses. She did every unpleasant task without complaint, and she waited. A week after her confession, Patterson returned. Theresa saw him riding up to the house, and panic seized her. She ducked into the barn, pressing herself against the wall, trying to hear the conversation. "Mr. Noble, I am disappointed you have not reconsidered my offer. I told you I was not interested." Nathaniel's voice was firm. "Everything has a price. Perhaps I can sweeten the deal. We are prepared to offer an additional $5,000 above our previous bid. You could offer $50,000 and my answer would be the same. This ranch is not for sale." "That is unfortunate." Patterson's voice took on a harder edge. "You should know that we have been buying up water rights in this region. Soon we will control access to most of the water sources your cattle depend on." "That sounds like a threat." "It is a fact. You need water, Mr. Noble. We will have it. I suggest you reconsider before you find yourself in a very difficult position." Theresa heard the creak of leather as Patterson remounted. "I will give you 1 week to think about it. After that, the offer expires." After he left, she emerged from the barn to find Nathaniel standing in the yard, his expression thunderous. When he saw her, some of the anger faded to concern. "You were hiding from him. You know him." "He is my uncle's business partner, the man I was supposed to marry." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "The land buying, you think it is connected to you, I do not know, maybe, or maybe it is just a horrible coincidence." "There are no coincidences like that." He ran a hand through his hair. "This is about finding you, is it not? The land buying is just a cover. He is looking for you. I should leave. If I go, maybe he will lose interest in the ranch." "No." The word was firm, absolute. "I meant what I said. I protect what is mine. And you, whatever else is true or untrue between us, you are under my protection." "Nathaniel, you could lose everything because of me. Let me worry about that." He looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time since her confession, she saw something other than hurt in his eyes. "Tell me about the water rights. What exactly did your father own?" "Land mostly in Sacramento. But there were mineral rights too and water rights to some of the rivers. My uncle controls it all until I turn 25 or marry. And if you marry Patterson, then it all becomes his, managed by my uncle. I would have no control, no say. I would just be a legal formality to transfer property." Nathaniel's jaw tightened. "Not while I am breathing." Over the next few days, a plan took shape. Nathaniel rode into Red Bluff and spoke with the sheriff, a man named McAllister who owed him favors. He also spoke with a lawyer, investigating the legality of her uncle's guardianship and the arranged marriage. What they found was not encouraging. As her legal guardian, her uncle had broad powers over her life and property. Unless she could prove he was acting against her interests or have him removed as guardian, she was trapped. "There is one way out," the lawyer said. "Marriage. If you marry someone else, your husband becomes your legal guardian and controls your property instead of your uncle." Theresa and Nathaniel rode back to the ranch in silence after that meeting. When they stopped to rest the horses, he finally spoke. "I want to be clear about something. I am angry that you lied. I am hurt that you did not trust me with the truth, but I am not angry that you are a woman. If anything, it makes more sense now." "What do you mean?" "The way I felt about you. I have never felt that way about anyone, man or woman. It confused me, made me question things about myself. But it was just my heart knowing something my head had not figured out yet." Her breath caught. "Nathaniel, let me finish." He turned to face her fully. I started falling in love with Terry Parker because Terry Parker was you. Your kindness, your strength, your determination, those were real. The way you treated the animals, the way you worked hard, the way you made me laugh, all of that was you. So maybe I did not know your real name or your gender, but I knew your heart. And that is what matters. Tears streamed down her face. I do not deserve your forgiveness. Probably not. But you have it anyway. He reached out and took her hand. The question is, what do we do now? I do not know. Even if you forgive me, even if we wanted to be together, my uncle will not stop. He will keep coming after me until he gets what he wants. Unless you are already married. She stared at him. What? The lawyer said marriage would solve the legal problem, so let us get married. Nathaniel, you cannot be serious. You cannot marry me just to solve a legal problem. That is not the only reason. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs gentle on her cheeks. I love you, Theresa Parker. I loved you when I thought you were Terry, and I love you now that I know the truth. I want you to stay, not as a ranch hand, but as my wife, if you will have me. This is insane. You barely know me. I know enough. I know that you are brave enough to face the world alone rather than submit to a life you did not choose. I know that you are strong and capable, and you work harder than men twice your size. I know that when you smile, my whole world gets brighter. I know that I want to spend my life learning everything else there is to know about you. He leaned his forehead against hers. Marry me, Theresa, not because you have to, but because you want to, because we could build something good together. I want to, she whispered. I want that so much. But I am terrified. What if Patterson challenges it? What if my uncle finds a way to have it annulled? Then we fight, together, but at least you will be fighting as Theresa Noble, not as my ranch hand or as your uncle's ward. She pulled back to look at him. You really mean this? I have never been more certain of anything in my life. She kissed him then, and it was nothing like that first kiss at the swimming hole. This kiss was a promise, a commitment, a leap of faith into an uncertain future. They were married 3 days later in a simple ceremony at the church in Red Bluff. Mrs. Chen stood as witness, tears streaming down her face. The other ranch hands were shocked but happy, clapping Nathaniel on the back and congratulating them both. Ben whispered to her, I knew there was something different about you, but I never guessed this. Theresa wore a dress Mrs. Chen had altered for her, simple blue cotton that felt strange after months in men's clothing. Her hair was still short, but Mrs. Chen had styled it as best she could. She felt exposed and vulnerable and happier than she had been in months. Nathaniel wore his best clothes, his hair neatly combed, his expression serious as he spoke his vows. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, he kissed her gently, like she was something precious. They spent their wedding night in the main house, in Nathaniel's room that was now their room. It was awkward and tender and overwhelming, learning each other in this new context. Nathaniel was patient, careful, making sure she was comfortable with every step. Afterwards, she lay in his arms, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. I never thought I could have this, she whispered. I thought I would spend my whole life running and hiding. You are safe now, he promised, his arms tightening around her. I will not let anyone hurt you. She wanted to believe him, but she could not shake the feeling that this was too good to be true, that something would come to shatter this fragile happiness. She was right. 2 weeks later, her uncle arrived. Theresa was in the garden with Mrs. Chen when she saw the carriage approaching. Her uncle, Marcus Patterson, was a large man with graying hair and cold eyes. He climbed down from the carriage with the confidence of someone who had never been told no in his life. Nathaniel was in the barn, and Theresa ran to get him. He is here. My uncle is here. Nathaniel's expression hardened. Stay behind me. They met Marcus in the yard. He looked at Theresa with contempt, taking in her simple dress, her short hair, the way she stood close to Nathaniel. "So you are the rancher who married my niece," Marcus said. "I am her husband, yes," Nathaniel replied evenly. "A marriage I intend to challenge. Theresa is not of sound mind to make such decisions. I am her legal guardian, and I did not give permission for this union. She is 22 years old and perfectly capable of making her own decisions. The courts will disagree. I have already filed the paperwork to have the marriage annulled and to have Theresa committed for evaluation." He pulled out a document. "This is a court order demanding she return to Sacramento immediately." Theresa felt the ground shift beneath her feet. "No. I am not going. You do not have a choice, my dear. You are mentally unwell, running away, pretending to be a man, making rash decisions. The doctors will help you see reason. The only thing unreasonable is your attempt to steal her inheritance," Nathaniel said. "We know what this is about, Patterson, money and control, but you have lost. She is married now. Her property is under my control, not yours. A marriage made under duress and deception. It will never stand." Marcus gestured to the carriage, and two large men stepped out. "I am taking my niece with me, with or without your cooperation." Nathaniel moved to stand fully in front of Theresa. "You are not taking her anywhere." The sheriff, McAllister, chose that moment to ride into the yard. Nathaniel had sent word to him the day before, anticipating trouble. "What is going on here?" McAllister asked. "This man is trying to kidnap my wife," Nathaniel said. "I have a court order," Marcus protested, showing the document to the sheriff. McAllister read it slowly, then handed it back. "This order is from Sacramento. We are in Tehama County. You have got no jurisdiction here. The law is the law." "Maybe so, but you are going to need to take this up with a judge here if you want to enforce it. And Judge Harrison is not back from San Francisco for another 2 weeks." McAllister tipped his hat to Theresa. "Congratulations on your marriage, Mrs. Noble." Marcus's face turned red with fury. "This is not over. I will be back with the proper authorities, and I will take what is mine." "Theresa is not yours," Nathaniel said quietly. "She never was. And if you come back here threatening her again, you will find out just how far I am willing to go to protect my wife." The two men stared at each other, tension crackling in the air. Finally, Marcus climbed back into his carriage. "You have not heard the last of this," he said before driving away. After he was gone, Theresa found she was shaking so hard she could barely stand. Nathaniel caught her, holding her steady. "It is all right," he murmured. "He is gone, for now, but he will come back. He will keep coming back until he gets what he wants. Then we will keep fighting him off." Nathaniel looked at the sheriff. "What are our options here? Legally, it is complicated. He is her uncle and was her legal guardian. The marriage does change things, but if he can prove it was done under duress or that she was not of sound mind, he might get it annulled." McAllister scratched his chin. "Your best bet is to get your own lawyer and fight it out in court. It will be messy and expensive, but it is better than the alternative." Over the next few weeks, they did exactly that. Nathaniel hired the best lawyer in Red Bluff, a sharp woman named Elizabeth Grant who specialized in property and family law. She compiled evidence of Marcus's mismanagement of Theresa's inheritance, his attempts to force an unwanted marriage, his threats. Theresa had to give testimony, recounting the abuse and manipulation. It was painful, dredging up those memories, but Nathaniel was beside her every step of the way, his presence a constant source of strength. The case went before Judge Harrison in late September. The courtroom was packed with curious onlookers, word having spread about the scandal. Marcus sat with his lawyers, confident and smug. Frederick Patterson was there too, glowering at Theresa with undisguised hatred. Elizabeth Grant presented their case methodically. She showed evidence of Marcus's financial misdeeds, using Theresa's inheritance for his own purposes. She presented testimony from people who had heard him threaten Theresa. She brought in a doctor who examined Theresa and declared her completely sound of mind. Marcus's lawyers argued that Theresa was a confused young woman who had been manipulated by a fortune-hunting rancher. They painted Nathaniel as an opportunist who had taken advantage of a vulnerable girl. But when Theresa took the stand and told her story in her own words, the courtroom fell silent. She described her fear, her desperation, the lengths she had gone to in order to survive. She talked about how Nathaniel had given her work and shelter without knowing who she was, how he had protected her, how he had married her not for her money, but because he loved her. "My uncle wants to control my life and my property," she said clearly. "But I am not a child or a piece of property. I am a grown woman capable of making my own decisions. And I choose Nathaniel. I choose this life. I choose freedom." The judge deliberated for 2 days. When he finally returned with his verdict, Theresa gripped Nathaniel's hand so hard her knuckles turned white. "I find that the marriage between Theresa Parker and Nathaniel Noble is valid and binding," Judge Harrison said. "Furthermore, I am removing Marcus Patterson as guardian and granting full control of Miss Parker's, now Mrs. Noble's, inheritance to her husband, with the stipulation that she have full access and input regarding its management." The courtroom erupted. Marcus stood, sputtering protests. Frederick Patterson stormed out. Theresa collapsed against Nathaniel, relief flooding through her so intensely she felt dizzy. "It is over," Nathaniel whispered. "You are free." They rode back to the ranch in a daze. The other hands had stayed behind to keep things running, and when they arrived, Ben and Carlos and Samuel came running out to hear the news. "We won," Theresa said, laughing and crying at the same time. "The judge ruled in our favor." There was celebrating that night. Mrs. Chen cooked a feast. The hands broke out a bottle of whiskey they had been saving for a special occasion. There was music and laughter and joy. But as the night wore on and the others drifted off to bed, Theresa and Nathaniel sat on the porch of their home, looking out at the land that was now truly theirs. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we live," he said simply. "We run the ranch, we build our life, we are happy." It sounds so simple when you say it like that. Maybe it is simple. We have been through the hard part. Now we get to enjoy what we fought for. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you, Nathaniel Noble. I love you too, Theresa Noble." The months that followed were a revelation. Theresa no longer had to hide who she was. She could wear dresses if she wanted or trousers when she was working. She could let her hair grow out or keep it short. She could be herself fully and completely. She discovered that running a ranch as Nathaniel's wife was not that different from working as Terry the ranch hand, except now she had a say in the decisions. They worked together as partners, her knowledge of horses and his expertise with cattle combining to make the ranch more prosperous than ever. With her inheritance secured, they were able to expand. They bought more land, hired more hands, improved the irrigation systems. They built a new barn and expanded the house. The ranch flourished under their joint stewardship, but the best part was simply being together, learning each other's habits and quirks, discovering that Nathaniel sang when he thought no one was listening, that he had a secret sweet tooth for Mrs. Chen's apple pie, letting him learn that she was terrified of spiders but fearless with the most aggressive bull, that she cried at beautiful sunsets, that she slept curled into his side every night like she was afraid he might disappear. The first time they argued, really argued, was over whether to buy a new bull or invest in more breeding stock. They both had strong opinions, and neither wanted to back down. But they learned to talk through their disagreements, to compromise, to respect each other's perspectives. In the spring of 1879, Theresa realized she was pregnant. She was terrified to tell Nathaniel, afraid he might coddle her or try to stop her from working. But when she finally worked up the courage to tell him, he just pulled her close and kissed her forehead. "A baby," he said, wonder in his voice. "We are having a baby. Are you happy? Happier than I have ever been." He did try to get her to take it easy, but she refused to be treated like she was fragile. She worked through most of her pregnancy, only slowing down in the final months when her belly made riding difficult. Their son was born in November, a healthy boy with Nathaniel's green eyes and Theresa's dark hair. They named him Thomas, after Theresa's father. Holding her son for the first time, looking at Nathaniel's face full of love and awe, Theresa thought about how far she had come. Less than 2 years ago, she had been running for her life, alone and terrified. Now she had a husband she loved, a son, a home, a purpose. "Thank you," she whispered to Nathaniel as he sat beside her on the bed, his finger gently held in their son's tiny fist. "For what? For seeing me. For believing in me. For giving me a place to belong." "You gave me the same thing," he said. "I was just existing before you showed up. Now I am living." Thomas grew quickly, becoming a curious, energetic toddler who followed his father everywhere. The ranch continued to prosper. Theresa's uncle made one more attempt to challenge the court's ruling but was firmly rebuffed. Frederick Patterson left California entirely, his business ventures having collapsed without access to her inheritance. On their 5th anniversary, Nathaniel took Theresa to the spot where they had first kissed, the swimming hole where everything had started to unravel and come together. "I have been thinking," he said, "about that day when you showed up looking for work. If someone had told me that the dusty kid on the tired horse would become the center of my whole world, I would have thought they were crazy." "I was terrified," Theresa admitted. "I thought you would see through the disguise immediately." "I almost did. There was something about you, something I could not quite put my finger on. But it did not matter. Man or woman, I saw someone brave and desperate and determined to survive. That is who I offered work to. That is who I fell in love with. Do you ever wish things had been different? That I had told you the truth from the beginning?" He considered the question seriously. "I wish you had not felt you had to lie, but I understand why you did. And honestly, I do not think I would have hired a woman showing up alone looking for ranch work. My own prejudices would have gotten in the way, so maybe it happened exactly the way it needed to." "I never thanked you properly," she said, "for what you said that first day. Where whatever helps you survive." Those words, they gave me hope. They told me that maybe I had found someone who would understand. You did find someone who understands, and I found someone who makes me better than I was." He pulled her close. "I love you, Theresa. Every version of you. Terry Parker and Theresa Noble, and whoever you decide to be tomorrow." She kissed him, pouring 5 years of love and gratitude and joy into it. They had 2 more children in the years that followed. A daughter they named Sarah, who had her mother's determination and her father's steady temperament. And another son, Daniel, who was quiet and thoughtful and loved the horses as much as Theresa did. The ranch became one of the most successful in the region. Theresa earned a reputation as an expert horsewoman, and people came from all over to buy her trained horses. Nathaniel's cattle operation expanded to include partnerships with other ranchers, creating a collective that gave them all better bargaining power. Mrs. Chen stayed with them for the rest of her life, becoming like a grandmother to the children. Ben eventually married his girl from town and started his own small ranch nearby. Carlos's sister moved to Red Bluff to be near him, escaping her bad marriage with Carlos's help. Samuel bought his piece of land and built a life there. The Wild West was slowly becoming more civilized. Towns grew. Railways expanded. The lawless days of the frontier began to fade into memory. But Theresa never forgot what it had been like to arrive in Red Bluff desperate and alone, or the man who had given her a chance without knowing who she really was. On their 20th anniversary, their children now grown, Nathaniel and Theresa sat on the porch of their home watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. "You ever miss it?" Nathaniel asked. "The adventure, the uncertainty." "Not even a little bit," Theresa said. "I had enough adventure to last a lifetime. Now I just want this. Peace, home, you." "I feel the same." He took her hand, his thumb tracing the wedding band she had worn for 2 decades. "You know what the best part of my life has been?" "What?" "Every single day with you, building this together. Raising our children. Growing old beside you. It has been better than anything I could have imagined." She leaned her head on his shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. "I love you, Nathaniel Noble. From the moment you said I could wear whatever helps me survive, you have been saving me. And you have been saving me right back." They sat together as the sun dipped below the horizon, their hands intertwined, their lives woven together so completely it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. The ranch spread out before them, the land they had built together, the legacy they would leave their children. Theresa thought about the frightened girl who had ridden into Red Bluff all those years ago, desperate and alone. She thought about the kind man who had seen past the disguise to the person beneath. She thought about the life they had created together, built on honesty and trust and love. It had not been easy. There had been struggles and challenges and moments when she thought everything would fall apart, but they had faced it all together and they had won. Not just survival, but a life worth living, a love worth fighting for. As darkness fell and stars began to appear overhead, Theresa smiled. She had found more than just safety in Red Bluff. She had found home, she had found love, she had found herself. And it had all started because a rancher had looked at a dusty kid in men's clothing and said, "Wear whatever helps you survive." Those words had given her permission to be exactly who she needed to be until she could be who she truly was. And in doing so, they had led her to the greatest love of her life. Years later, as an old woman sitting on that same porch, Theresa would tell her grandchildren the story. They would listen with wide eyes to tales of their grandmother dressing as a boy, of narrow escapes in courtroom battles, of hard work and harder choices. But the part they loved best, the part they always asked her to repeat, was the moment she first met their grandfather. The moment when a kind man offered work to a desperate stranger and changed both their lives forever. "What did he say, Grandma?" they would ask, even though they had heard it 100 times, and she would smile and repeat the words that had meant everything. "He said, 'Wear whatever helps you survive.' And that is exactly what I did until I did not have to survive anymore, until I could live."